All right, so what I'd like to do, Steve, is spend a bit of time talking with you about some of the opportunities that we see in the field for salespeople to gain better leverage and better control over the sales engagements they've got with clients. And I think you and I have both seen some common elements. So let's spend some time working that through. Make sense?
Sure.
So as we've observed, Steve, the behaviours of salespeople, I know that you and I have commented to each other that we've seen some very common facets of performance and some common opportunities to improve. Mm-hmm. The one I know we've both touched on at various times is the opportunity to uplift the level of control used in engagements with clients. Just talk to me a bit about what your view has been in terms of the opportunity there.
When we're really talking about control, we're really talking about owning the structure of the conversation.
Okay.
Right. So typically, we want to see, and what we look for is a clean structure, order to the conversation. Mm-hmm. A solid introduction, a clear agenda, a clear purpose, a description of your organization would be nice, and then seeking to understand more about the client's organization, their situation, and then getting to an articulation of their needs, understanding the implications of the needs, and then starting to understand how your organization can strategically position itself to help your client organization achieve their objectives.
So there's a lot of stuff in there, so let's break this down a bit. So the thing that leapt out when you first started describing some of the pieces there was the agenda, that opening to the meeting. And you and I both know that sales methodologies the world over advocate the use of this structured agenda at the start of the meeting. But in practical terms, given that we haven't always got the time to fax ahead, to do this bloody great document full of agenda stuff, what does it really mean? Boil it down to its kind of bare bones for me.
Really the agenda is about your purpose.
Yes.
Right. So while we want to provide the table of contents around our discussion, which mm-hmm. is important because it gives us a point of reference, mm-hmm. We also want to articulate our purpose. Right. So, Mr. Client, we're sitting here in front of you today. We'd like to discuss a little bit about our organization. You may know us, you may not. We'd like to understand more about your role within the organization, maybe a little bit about some of the things that are driving you. You've called us in here for a reason, or we're here for a reason, and that reason is to discuss our organization, the solutions that we offer in this particular area, and how these could be of benefit to you. Does this sound like a good idea to you? Right? Is this acceptable? I think what's interesting is what we've observed is how rarely this is done. What we have seen is, in general, salespeople will launch into an exploration of needs without providing the client a clear understanding of what business they're actually in, who they are, where they fit within the organization, and then actually understanding who the client is. Right? What is their role within the organization? What sort of factors are important to them in terms of running their business?
And I like the add that you made of the question at the end of the agenda, because my view has always been that the content of the agenda, it could be good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter, but as long as you're gaining some degree of customer buy-in at that point, you've started a relationship that's based on you controlling through questions mm-hmm. and then responding and giving you either objections or giving you buy-in that you can move forward to the next level. Do you put that in there deliberately?
Absolutely. So if you think of it this way, mm-hmm. If we don't seek that confirmation and validation at that point,
yes.
If we walked in and the client had an agenda item and we gloss over it, what that says to the client is what you think is not important. We're here to tell you about us. It's only our purpose that's important. So it's a two-way street, right? It's about understanding or seeking the client or getting the client to understand your purpose for being there, but then also trying to understand the client's purpose. They're not giving you their time because they're nice. They're giving you their time because they feel there's some value you can add. They may not know where it is right now, or they may. Let's at least try and understand where that is.
And I've also found that when I've certainly been observing salespeople, that the really astute ones use that question not only to show that they're interested and involved in the client, but they're almost using it as a pre-close before the meeting's or even started.
Absolutely. Right, so getting the client to say yes is not a bad thing.
No, I quite agree. And I mean, that whole principle of questions, as we talk about control, my sense has been that those salespeople who choose to ask or use a questions-based approach as opposed to a presentation-based approach certainly appear to have higher levels of control through the entire sales cycle. Has that been your experience too?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you are in that questioning mode, what you're effectively doing is allowing the client to articulate their needs.
Yes.
It may sound like you're not having control, but you're gaining the information that you're seeking. And so long as you can have a structure to that particular conversation,
yes,
right, around the needs, ensuring that lists are complete, ensuring that you're not being led down a rat hole, or if you're taken off topic, to come back to the agreed to agenda. That is another critical aspect to getting that initial agreement.
Now, how do you do that? Because you could easily be quite rude in the customer's perception in pulling them back onto your agenda. So how do you do that subtly?
Well, this all comes down to that whole EQ discussion, right? So having, what I'll say, access to that emotional aspect of it and understanding that this is another human being sitting across from you, right? Obviously, if they're bringing something up that's taking you off topic, it may be important to that individual. So we need to address that. But at the same time, we need to at least seek to bring it back, to bring the conversation back. And that may take a form of, at least identifying that this is something that was not clearly in the agenda, and then to ask, would you like it to be included in the agenda? The client will then self-select, right? If it's not important, they'll drop it. If it is important, guess what? We should be talking about it.
Okay. So that makes sense to me. I think that sense of the person you're engaging with, not just the client you're engaging with and their job title and role in the decision-making unit, is a really important part of both engaging, building rapport, and developing control. So Steve, this conversation has, I think, taken us in the right direction thus far. What I'd like to do is hold there and maybe come back and revisit some of these issues later on.
Absolutely.